Okay, so we're going to begin. We're holding the second half of Siman Kuf Aleph in Taaruvot. This Siman has to do with Chaticha Ruyul Iskabed. A unique issue is an issue Midirabanan. As we will see, there are various issue Midirabanan in Hilchos Taaruvos. And when we talk about Isur Dirabanan, we're not talking just about that the Isur itself is Dirabanan, but here we're talking about the Shiur is Dirabanan. In Chaticha Ruyul Iskabed, what we're saying is that the Chaticha is Asura Midoraisa or Midirabanan, but it's not Batal because of the Rabbanan, right? Because we have the regular Bitul B'Shishin, Bitul B'Roiv that we're acquainted with. And occasionally we have Bitulim that are in larger numbers, greater numbers are required, or in the unique situation where it's not Batal at all. Davar Shebeminyan, Ruyul Iskabed, Davar Sheyesh Lo Matirin, that we will see B'ezrat Hashem next week. Certain things do not have the Din Bitul applied to them because of a Chumrah of Chazal. There's a certain Chashivos to them. They're important in some way, they're important. And once we talk about importance, you can appreciate what the whole balagan, you know what the word balagan means? The whole confusion about cheese was. In making cheese, you have something called the dover amamid that makes the cheese. So even though the cheese is milk produced by a kosher animal, so we don't have the problem of milk coming from a treifa, nevertheless, what's forming the cheese is an ingredient called dover amamid. It's ma'amid, the whole cheese. It forms the cheese, the rennet. And various types of rennets. Regardless of the type, if that rennet is usher, it could be a problem. What kind of a problem? Well, it could be potentially basar b'chalav too, if it's in the intestines. And the Taz appears to be more concerned with that, with the rennet being a mixture of basar b'chalav. For the most part, I don't think it's ever going to be a problem if the rennet is dried up, very, very dry, no taste to it, like wood. And that should not be a problem. And that, therefore, is one of the leniencies we have with capsules, with medication. When it's not royal lachila, not even rachilas kelev even. So technically, medina, whenever you have a question of tarfus, with something which is not really royal lachila, it's not a problem. We try to avoid it, we find alternatives, kosher vitamins, kosher medication, right? For a variety of reasons. But technically, halachically, it's not a problem if something cannot be eaten. However, if something is a dover on mamid, right, it has chashivas, it's not bottle, so what about that? That's the question here with cheese. Not as far as the tarfus itself, because tarfus, you can't eat it, it's treif. Either basar b'chalav, which is also usually not a problem, even though the Taz appears to be an issue of it. The problem is a dover mam and a dover is that like the isur be'ein because it's so important. It's such an important ingredient, and that is what some Rishonim hold. I think it was the isur be'heter. That holds that the dover mam is like a mamash the isur be'ein. It's like the real thing. It's like the real isur. It's the whole thing. What about the cheese? Don't forget the cheese. It's dover mamid here. So dover mamid is not bottle. If it's not bottle, and it has the whole chashivas of making the cheese, right? It's asur. The whole thing is asur. And it's not asur because of basar v'chalav necessarily, right? It's asur because it's an avela, or whatever it is, whatever the isur comes from.
That's the thing, because basar v'chalav is an avela. It's not just basar v'chalav and kosher milk.
Right.
That's basar v'chalav.
Right. Yeah, but just remember, with cheese was different for a variety of reasons, and I didn't get too deep into it because there's not that much, except for the Taz. You notice there's not really that much of an elaboration on cheese because either you follow the marshal, and that's I think the achronim. That's what they tend to do with cheese. They're not machmir because they follow the marshal. The marshal says cheese is not dover royal iskabed. You don't offer people a slice of cheese, something. It doesn't have that importance. So here we're dealing with not with kashrus per se, we're dealing with specifically the isur of royal iskabed. So when it comes to cheese, you have a variety of reasons of why this would not be an issue here.
Cheese is by definition.
Right, that's what I was going to say too. The whole idea behind the tarfus of cheese, besides the ingredient, is also an isur d'Rabbanan not to eat the cheese made by a goy. And we learned that royal iskabed, in the same din as birya, applies to Isuri Derabanan that, at least like Ilan pointed out, to have an Ikar of Doraisa. So technically, chicken cooked with milk, which is an Isur Derabanan, we would have a din of royal iskabed if it ever applied a situation of Basar Bechal of Derabanan. So even though it's a Derabanan, the Isur is Derabanan, and royal iskabed is Derabanan, that's okay. Royal iskabed also applies in the Derabanan just as much as Biria does, except that it's not as common perhaps. And the only time we will not be strict with royal iskabed by a Derabanan would be Bishul Akum, for example, something which is not a real Isur Derabanan with an Ikar Deraisa. With a connection to an Isser which is really prohibited by the Torah. But as far as the Halacha, it applies to Isur Derabanan as well. So with cheese, you have the problem of cheese being Usr if it was made by Goyim. Even if they used enzymes. So that in itself was an issue already. The Taz, of course, does not speak about that, doesn't get involved in that. He was more concerned about the Basar V'Chalav problem here. And we even mentioned the roiv. Roiv milk does not come from treifas, so we have here roiv. As far as milk, where did the milk come from? Milk that comes from a treifa is no good. But that's not an issue here because we're assuming it's not.
It's talking about kernel treif milk.
No. Treif milk is regular milk. You're talking about from a behemoth tmeya.
Yeah.
From behemoth tmeya, chaya tmeya. From an animal that is an impure animal like camel's milk, you would not be able to curd. You can not be able to produce the cheese. So that's not an issue. Tmeya is not the issue. It's a cow, but it was treifa.
Is it treifa?
Yeah, sure, it could be, but we don't know. We have a rov, right? They milk the cow. We don't know.
Any
milk. Yeah, any milk. Sure.
As a matter of fact, had that.
They had. It was an issue. Yeah.
With stomachs.
Right. Or with injections, I believe. Yeah. That they can perforate here, the stomachs. That could make it a treifa. So it was a problem. It still may be. In any event, so that was some of the points that were brought out in cheese. Yeah.
Musser Maimon is not batal in a basic rule, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
But the Taz talks about it as if you have an Isser Balua, as opposed to, even though it's an Isser Maimon,
yeah, very good.
About Isser Balua, which is not.
That's a good point.
That's a different criteria for
yeah, because remember when we said about Ruyel Iskabed, we defined Ruyel Iskabed. What is the criteria for a Chaticha, a Ruyel Iskabed? Just like we said, what is the criteria to make a birya? And we've seen that Ruyel Iskabed is a little bit tricky in the sense that it really has to be Ruyel Iskabed, right? Meaning that if it's lacking in its importance because it's full of feathers, right? Remember that? Chicken full of feathers. It's too big, right? It would not qualify as royally iskabed. On the other hand, a dover amaimid by itself is not royally iskabed because it's not something substantial.
For sure. Yeah.
So therefore, the Isur Balua cannot be a royally iskabed by definition.
But wait, but the Muslim itself.
For a different reason. Dover Maimin is not bottom 1,000 because of what it does, its function.
Right. That's great. So if you have a tray of milk that has the rennet in it, let's say that's
right.
the rennet.
Right.
You use that as your starter. So I would have thought that was in 1,000.
In the cheese.
In the cheese. What's this Isser Balua stuff? Maybe to me that's what it is. Instead of
There's twice.
There are two issues.
The starter is not bottled, even if you have 1,000 times as much milk against her. Right. Now you have a achievement size, unless it's a chaticha royal iskabed din, right. That cheese would be bottled in 6. So the question is, does royal iskabed apply to that cheese? And because the isser is the rennet, and the rennet that wouldn't be misbottled, but it's not royal iskabed, so the cheese that was not able to misbottle the rennet itself is misbottled in 60. Did I get it correct?
Okay, let's do that.
Well,
I think Elion's getting it, but I didn't get it.
Something like that, right. You have two separate issues.
You have the issue of the Maimon.
You have a Dover Maimon, yeah. Right. Yeah. Dover,
How do you put them together in that case? How do you put them, that would be helpful a lot to say. If you have a piece of Isser Maimon,
right.
How do you put that together? Dealing with, because the goal here is to deal with some CRFs. That's the
right.
goal here. But how do you get there? You start with a Cholov Treifa.
Not Cholov Treifa. Because if it would be a Cholov Treifa, then the cheese would be treif because of the chalav treif
That's
itself.
like all milk.
Because of itself, the whole
Okay.
gufa is the whole chaticha will be
I'm
gufa
talking
shalisa.
about the,
Right.
let's say that had, there's two ways to render for making cheese. One is
Right.
for a cava, and the other is put the milk in the bowl, and that's the animal, and then that milk is rendered. Assuming that's what's going on here, and it's
Right.
trait that's put in the animal.
Yeah.
So then that would be not possible, and I would have thought that would have been not in 1,000. It's like a nevela. I mean, it's not a nevela, but it's like a.
But only in what it is acting as a maimed for. The rennet
So
is
the
not
cheese-
acting as a maimed for the vegetables in the pot.
So,
Yeah, the rennet will not be misbottled in the milk, where it is acting as a maimed.
so then it would be usher. The whole milk would be usher.
No. Ilan, now you said it right. Now you added a little detail that made a whole difference. You have the cheese,
Yeah, the
and you have the rest of the pot. Everybody's in agreement that the cheese is a problem. Why?
From this, you mean?
Why? The Dover Mammon is not bottled.
So all the cheeses.
The cheese is also. But what about the rest of the cheeses? What about all the cheese? This is mixed with other cheeses too,
Oh, that's what's going on. That was.
right? Is that what you were trying to say?
Is that-
Not necessarily the pot, but other cheeses.
Is that the Taaruvot?
Will this cheese cause a problem to the thousands of other cheeses that are there?
It would.
If it's a royal iskabet,
If the royal iskabet din
Applies to it.
to the rennet.
applies to the cheese or to the rennet, exactly.
But if the cheese itself is royal iskabet, but the rennet, because it's an isur balua according to us,
Right.
since the rennet is what's ushering the cheese, and the rennet is an isur balua in the cheese
Right.
relative to the other cheeses.
Right,
So the rennet is not a royal iskabet something.
right.
Wait, so how did the Isser Balua come?
Where's the
No. So therefore,
Where's the Balua
the
coming? Why do you
balua,
say Balua? Where's
what,
the Balua there?
there's some who would like to say very, very nicely, what's the Isser here? The Isser is the Maimed, it's an Isser balua. The cheese is not also. The cheese comes from kosher milk.
Yeah, I think that's what he's getting
Right?
at. I don't think it's.
Yeah,
I think
no,
he's
that's
getting
what
at the cheese. I think he's getting at the.
Do you know what an Isser balua is, right?
Yeah, you have.
Like dam in a piece of meat that was not salted. The piece of meat is kosher. What's making it usser is the dam a balua in it. Okay, so that does not transform it into a royalist kabet problem because it's not an isur gufa. The isur is not in the guf. The isur is an isur balua,
Yeah.
right? So same thing here. Some want to say, what's the problem with the cheese that has non-kosher rennet concerning royalist kabet over here?
Wait. Let's just take care of the cheese for the
The piece of cheese is usser. The piece of cheese is usser for
Because-
whatever, because Goyim made it. That's one reason. Number two, it has rennet. Treif rennet.
let's
That
say-
comes from Nevela.
Then, so that makes it's not bottled in 1,000, or it could be trace milk.
No, forget about treif milk. It's not bottled in 1,000.
Trace milk is the starter. Is the
Treif milk? Okay, the treif milk. So the cheese, cheese,
red-
yeah. But the treif milk is a little bit more of a problem. Because when you're talking about treif milk,
Yeah.
the whole cheese is usser. It's not an isur balua, remember?
If it's
Here,
the
the
cheese,
Taz-
but he's talking about the trace milk that was the mom.
The Taz has
Yeah.
two things in there. The milk itself.
Right,
is from a
you're right.
treifa. The milk itself is from a treifa, and B. The Taz has two.
Right.
The milk used as the maimed catalyst was treifa.
Okay, you're talking about the Taz example of Dover Maimed. Because there's two kinds of Dover Maimed. There's a Dover Maimed that comes from an Avela, intestines,
Yeah.
okay?
Right.
And then there's a Dover Maimed that the Taz as well mentions, that it was made from treif milk.
That's what he's concerned
No,
about.
he's not concerned about it. He brings it, he mentions it.
That's what he's discussing. He's not discussing
Right.
the case with the. With
Right, I understand. He mentions that example of treif rennet. He agrees, and so does everybody else, that if the whole cheese comes from treif milk, that we're talking about the gufa isur. The question is not the milk from which the cheese was made, from what the rennet was made. The rennet was made from treif milk. And this rennet is a davar amamed.
How can it be Basar question?
So he says, where's the isur? The isur is in the rennet. It's not in the cheese. Is it in the cheese or is it in the rennet?
Is there and then rennet?
The rennet is balua in the cheese.
Actually, the milk.
Let's
that
say
makes
the milk
cheese,
with the rennet goes into the other milk, and yeah.
All it is a small piece,
I think it's the milk. No?
or milk, or whatever it
The
is.
milk that has that rennet in it.
Right,
Comes from rennet.
exactly. So that whole rennet concept is basically an isur balua. It's not the gufa isur.
No,
Yeah,
it should be bottled in 1,000.
you're right.
Okay.
That's the din of Dover Mamid not being bought on 1,000.
This is Beluah means in this case still not bought on 1,000.
Yes, but because it's a Dover Mamid, not because it's royal iskabed.
Fine.
Right.
But only relative to whatever it is.
Right. It's Maimed, so therefore it has. That's what I was saying. It has a chashivas. It's important because of its function. It makes the cheese. But now we're going over to a new halacha called din chaticha ruyal iskabed, and we said that one of the conditions was that it has to be the gufa thing is aser, not an isur balua that makes it aser. If you have something that has a belia or a davar maimid, as like Taz is saying, and others would say, that's not a real gufa shel isur. That's not the real McCoy. That's not the real Isser. That's just something in there that's making it Isser that I can't eat it. It could be a Belia, it could be a Maimid, it could be Dam, except for Basar b'chalav. Why? Because Basar b'chalav, the whole thing is formed by combining the Belia of Basar and Chalav. That's the only exception. But you follow me? An Isser Belua is not the real Isser. There's something there inside that's making this cheese Isser.
The things here, Melicha,
Yeah.
the Bach and the
Okay.
The Bach holds that full.
Right.
It's the same as Sir Massimo.
Okay, it's a different
Whereas
name.
the Tazi says the Migufo means it's indefinite. There's no suffix. It's not suffix.
Okay, very different.
But it's not as a Machmas Atzmo.
Right.
Because that would be, so therefore, Venus Akum, it's an Isser Gufo, but it's not an Ismo according to the
Okay, that's a different definition, but it's the same idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
Well,
same.
but that's where the notes the Bach and the Taz are. The Bach holds that this Makufo is
Right.
the rabbinic concept somehow is applied to Venus Akum.
Okay.
She's made by
If it was made by a non-Jew.
and then the Bach holds that that's if this name is the Isser Machmas Atzmo. So then he says, okay, did I say this?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
So the Bach says that the Ramah, so the Torah's Chatas, but the Ramah talks about this in two places, the issue of one is Venus Akum, which is a Mr. Magufo, and then what did you say?
And the vast understanding is Haticha Ruah Nitchabed, it's not Nispatel. Because
It's not mispatel, and therefore he applies that back to the says that I guess the Torah's Chatas or something
Okay.
says in our case of as the starter, that also the Machmas Isser case with the trade starter, therefore it also isn't batel. Is that correct?
I didn't get the last part because I was Catholic Rabbi Akiva Eger.
It's complicated.
Yeah.
I don't want to. It's a complicated.
Yeah, but we have to figure out what the conclusion
If
is.
you make a nice little table, it's not complicated.
Yeah,
You
you can put it into a table form, but in the end, that's why I didn't want to get it too much into
Okay, I
it.
don't want to
No. I didn't want to get too much into it because we're very lenient in the end when it comes to cheese. So we have various reasons to. What?
They're not leaning on
On the
that.
test, yeah. Well, depends on who gives the test.
I'll try to put it in a table.
Yeah, it all depends,
It's
you
not-
know.
it's not-
They were leaning
It
on
depends on who gives the test.
They're
You
not
know?
leaning on that.
You know, some of it, some of this does not really is not really relevant, and especially when you consider the marshal, but cheese in itself is not a dover really skabit. I mean, we don't have to concern ourselves with the dover mamid. Dover mamid is significant for other reasons in the cheese itself, But if this cheese gets mixed up with others, yeah.
The double minded is the reason why.
Well, any
Because
cheese,
the stuff that took milk into whatever
whatever makes the cheese, that's called dover mamid. It could be an enzyme, it could be rennet. It's what they call rennetless cheese. Right. Yeah. But we have the rabbinic prohibition against eating cheese that was made by a goy.
And that's similar to yayin and with oil and
Yes.
with bread.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
Cheese,
Exactly the same thing. Right. Okay. So we spoke about the various criteria that's necessary to form a chaticha royal iskabed, and we also spoke about the svara behind the possible svara of why chaticha royal iskabed should be aser, in other words, not as a result of its chashivas, but what's the svara of what makes it and what does not make it a chaticha royal iskabed. In other words, it's important, but what makes it and what does not make it, does it depend on an actual shear, on an actual size, or does it depend on the mitzius? If it's something that it's worthy, is fit to serve, or not. Okay? In other words, what's the definition of something that is royal iskabed? That was also a little bit important. Is it in the shear? If it does not have the shear, it's not chashuv, it's not important anymore. Or does it depend on the mitziut, on the reality? Do we need something that is fit to be served in front of guests? And therefore, if it does not fit, and we're going to see all of this is going to make a difference in the following halachas. If it does not fit, then it does not qualify. And that led us, of course, to the situation with the chicken with feathers and all kinds of isurim that are not ready yet to be eaten. And we had a machlokes between the various Rishonim, and even between the Mechaber and the Ramah. The Maisa, what do you do? So the Mechaber brings both opinions with the chicken, and he says, and he's lenient, according to the opinion that even if the chicken is featherless, but it's not cooked, raw meat, for example, you can't serve it this way to guests, so therefore it's not called a ruilis kabed. And he brings down the shita that yesh cholkim al kozer, that there are some that disagree with all of this. They are the ones who are strict. And the Ramah agrees with that, except with something that tzorech tikun godol, he said, or maise godol, that which requires a lot of work. Mechuseres maise godol, he says, tarnegoles ben itzoso, if it has still its feathers. So the Ramah agrees that if it requires a lot of work, it's also not roilis kabed. Okay, these are some of the halachas that we covered last time. Perhaps we can continue now to the next seat. Also, we have Daled through Tes, and they're pretty easy, even though there are quite a few of them. It's Ifim. I'm going to go through them and just elaborate on the ones that need a little bit more elaboration. Shuman de Kanto, Eno Roilis Kabed. The Mechaber makes a point that there are certain fats of the Shuman Kanto. Kanto is one of the intestines. I think it's called in English. It's called the smaller intestine, the ileum, I-L-E-M, I believe it's called in English. And it was a delicacy. I think especially, in certain animals, certain fats are very much a delicacy. The fat of the tail of a sheep, as it's called in Farsi, dombe, and in Arabic it's called liya. Or in Hebrew, Lashon HaKodesh is called aliyah in the Torah. It's a delicacy. People sometimes eat it by itself, or they mix it with other meats. Yeah. So that's what the Mechaber brings down here. But this is the shuman of the kanto, of that intestine. He says, "Eno roilis kabed." Aval, Ramah says, "Or shuman avos mikre roilis kabed ve'eno boto." The skin of the shuman of the avos of the duck is called roilis kabed, and therefore is not bottom. Now, what's going on over here? What we're talking about here is various parts of an animal. We're no longer talking about the animal itself, the full chicken. It is possible, as we pointed out, that even though the chicken itself is not roilis kabed, it may have parts of it that is roilis kabed. Organs, limbs, all kinds of things that are within it. Liver, kidneys, spleen. Have you ever had spleen? Tohol? Yeah?
Babas is a goose.
Okay, I always get confused. Yeah.
Goose,
duck. Yeah.
Barbas.
Yes, you're right. Barbas is a duck, right. And avaz is a goose. That's correct. You're right. Anyway, do you know the difference?
You look at
Yeah,
it,
yeah.
10%.
Yeah.
Ducks are full.
Yeah.
Geese can be aggressive.
That's correct. That's right. Yeah. Anyway.
It's the fat of the liver.
No. So that's what the Mechaber here discusses in Sif Dalet, that certain fats are not roilis kabed, and he points out to one shuman akanto, even though there's others. And the Ramah brings the case of or shuman avos, which is a goose. You said right? Avaz, a goose. Now, what's with goose or duck? What's so special about it? They're fatty. They're much fatter. There's a lot more fat to them. And what's interesting about them is that the liver is also a delicacy. Duck liver. I don't know about goose liver. Is it goose liver?
Absolutely.
Or is it a duck liver?
No.
Yes? Yeah. Yeah.
They would feed them with a lot of...
They still do that. They still do that. Mefutamim. Yeah.
Right.
What is that?
I feed them a lot, and
It grows.
right, it grows. And
Yeah.
That's called babulim.
Yeah.
right,
Right. Yeah. So a lot of these things can be possibly royally scabbed. And that's what we need a little bit of direction here. What is and what's not. Now, apparently, when these parts are still in the chicken, they're not separable. If the chicken is not royally scabbed for whatever reason, the whole thing, then the parts are also not royally scabbed because they're part. I mean, you haven't separated them. I think somebody speaks about that. That if they're not apart, they're not. Just because, I mean, how could you say that the chicken is not and the parts inside are? I mean, if it's still inside, then it's not. We don't say that they are, but the whole chicken is not. Okay? But once you separate the pieces, the various pieces possibly can be. And we're going to talk about a few of them. So here, in talking about the fats, we have a Mechabed and we have the Ramah, but we have an interesting Taz and Shach. The Taz and Shach, in discussing this whole business about fats, various fats, they say in reality, don't take the trouble to figure this out too much. They say, you know why? Because this is already tolu b'minhag hamakam. Chaticha real iskabed, in general, not just fats, is something which is really tolu b'minhag hamakam, because you may find certain foods, items like fats here, and the Ramah especially, which is the one that's very unique, because he says that the skin, the shuman, avos, right, would be royally scabbed. But it's not so in some countries. Nobody eats it in some places. And if they do, it's cut up. If it's cut up, it may be not royally scabbed, even though some say it is royally scabbed, even if it's cut up. Right? So the Shach and Taz basically say this whole din of royally scabbed is told by Minhag HaMokam. So the Minchas Yaakov brings down very, very nicely a good question. He says, wait a minute, if this whole din is told by Minhag HaMokam, so what's this whole halacha here of royally scabbed, right? It's always going to depend on minhag hamakam. Here, it doesn't appear to be that that's the case. I mean, we have quite a few halachas of indin chaticha royally scabbed. So, what do you mean that this is tolu b'minhag hamakam? You understand his question? In other words, how could you say that this whole thing will depend on minhag hamakam? We have the poiskim, we have everything that is clear that this is a black and white halacha. Had this been totally minhag hamakam, I mean, they would have said so. I mean, here they don't appear to make that comment.
For example, cow or the sheep.
Right. So the Shach and Taz did make a point that some food items are totally b'minhag hamakam, but then why do we have this halacha of royally scabbed? So, in other words, in general terms, say that everything that is royally scabbed without regard to minhag hamakam. Somehow it should have been brought out that it all depends. And that's it. No. Nobody ever said anything about that. And they just clearly said, royally scabbed is usher. So the basic answer to this question is as follows. There's various ways of looking at it. The simple way is that what the Chachamim considered royally scabbed will always remain royally scabbed regardless of what we think and what we say. All right? But if they didn't mention it, if it's not on their list, then those food items would depend on minhag hamakam. Okay, so that's the answer to our question. You know, how could you say something's totally? Yes, if it's not on the list of the Chachamim. Anything that is on their list will always remain royally scabbed, whether we like it or not.
So it enlarges the list.
Yes, it enlarges the list. Exactly. It's an additional stringent. It's additional chumrah. Yeah.
Taste change,
Right. Right. Exactly.
Does it stay on?
It doesn't stay. Minhag hamakam means the minhag hamakam and azman.
It's not.
And azman. Things could have been, they're no longer. And, yeah, exactly, yeah. And there are a lot of food items that are not eaten here that are eaten in the Middle East. You know, all kinds of things. And I'm going to give you an example soon. That's with Seif Hey. Seif Hey talks about the kurkavan. Kurkavan b'chen shar b'nei mayim enayim ruim niskabed. So the Mechaber goes on to say that these two are not royally niskabed. What are they? Kurkavan are the gizzards, and shar b'nei mayim are the various other stomachs and intestines. You know what kishke is? Or in Farsi you have something called sirabi, right? That's a delicacy in Iran and in some countries where you take the intestine, they clean it out very, very well, and they fill it later on with rice and with, of course, with the various spices, and they cook it. It's a delicacy, and various other countries have something similar to that. And
But nobody,
what is that?
nobody eats. Haggis is the Scottish version of that.
Haggis, the Scottish version.
Scottish.
Okay, I haven't seen it.
Why
Yeah.
would it be?
Yeah. So anyway,
Because of what they filled it with.
now, so the Mechaber here says that all these bnei me'ayim ruin is kabbalah. Now, first of all, what does he take it from? How does he know that?
Probably Gemara.
Huh?
Probably, I was wondering that myself. Probably the Gemara somewhere.
That's right. It's a Gemara in the Dorim. This is taken from the Gemara in the Dorim. It speaks there about something totally different than what we're talking about, but it mentions bnei me'ayim when it talks about meat. And it basically says there that that's not food. That's not regular food, that's not regular meat, that's not what somebody has in mind when it talks about meat. And so you're right, so that's where it's pretty much taken from, that this is not really real food. Why would I think it's real food? Why would I think it's royal iskabed? And that is why the Mechaber talks about it. Because when they do fill it up with the rice and with the filling, stuff it, it does become something very important. It does become chashub.
Actually, pen comes from
The what?
quihen.
Yeah.
It comes in from the essence and liver,
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah, it could be, yeah.
Does it make a dish and not as the main dish?
Yeah, that was a little bit part of the question, part of the the doubt over here. So some explain it like this: when it comes to filled intestines, the filled intestines become chashuv once they're filled, not before. So what some want to say, why it's not called a royal iskabet? Because it has to be royal iskabet in the very start. Since it only becomes once you fill it up, it's not called a real chaticha royal iskabet. You go according to the matzah before it was filled, not what it will be later. Yeah, but another explanation about this kishka business is that what's important in the kishka, not the kishka, the filling. The filling is not royal iskabet. See what I mean? So there's various ways to explain why bnei me'ayim and things that are similar to it are not royal iskabet. Yes.
Also, not just the intestines.
Yeah. So that's a second way of looking at it.
When we say pita,
Yeah.
CRL is not buckled in, yesh balach, does it not?
Yavesh.
You mean yavesh?
Yavesh
Yavesh.
balach. In other words,
We're going to talk about it soon.
we usually concern with,
We're going to talk about it soon.
because
Min b'mino, min
yavesh
b'rishon.
is usually buckled for this special cheese with other cheeses.
It makes no difference. It
Makes
will
no difference. It's
makes no
not-
difference.
you mean-
Once we say it's not bottle, it's not bottle.
Yavesh,
Yeah.
it's
So
called-
what may make a difference, according to some poskim, is min b'mino, min b'she'enu minoi. By chaticha root is kabin and by birya.
I'm not sure that I understand this. Had the case of the beria,
Right?
that is that.
Yeah.
You take-
That's the tam. There's
so
a
would
tam
the same
problem.
thing also apply the
No.
iskabed?
No, but chaticha root is kabin. Remember what we said, that the tam is not royal is kabin.
So therefore, the roitiv would not be us.
No, would not be us. You still need shishim.
Because of tam.
Okay, because of tam only.
So wouldn't that be yavesh to the roitiv?
Yes,
Yeah.
but you could.
So,
Yeah.
so there would be an
There
exception.
there can be a situation when you have yavish belach that you have to concern yourself only with the tam. In other words, if it were bottled for some reason. I'm saying if it were not bottled for some reason, how about the plita itself? How about the rest of the food? Yeah, the rest of the taaruvot, which is not, whatever,
So
the liquid.
So the iskabed.
Yeah.
So the iskabed, because if it's
Oh, I see
small-
what you're saying. Yeah, the isser in essence is, yeah, you could say that. It's yavish be because if you have various solids, the solids would not be bottled beroiv. The plita would be bottled b'shishim in the liquid. But you're right, the actual isser itself will not be bottled afilu be'elef in the chatichas if there are other pieces there. But you need shishim for the plita, that's all. That we'll talk about soon, the next. Yeah, we'll talk about that in the next seif. Yeah. All right, just before we go into the next seif, I think the Shach brings this one down. That even though the bnei me'ayim, the Mechaber says, are not royally iskabed, they are called a meichel she'oil al shulchan shemelochim. When you learn Hilchos Bishul Akum, you will see that one of the criteria for food that cannot be cooked by a goy, if they cook it, it's usher, is it has to be oil al shulchan shemelochim. It has to be something that is served on a king's table. Something important, a very special food. How come you can drink Starbucks coffee? A goy made it.
I'm not sure you know that.
I don't think
I'd like
it's.
to know why you can't
I don't
make
think
sure.
I don't think you need to go there because I don't think it's the best coffee anyway. But anyway, but there's certain things that goy is allowed to cook for you. Something which is something that can eat raw anyway. So the cooking process didn't do anything. Yeah, you can eat an apple raw, and if he cooks the apple, he didn't really do anything to it. But you can't eat a goy if you can't eat the omelet that a goy made for you. Even though you could technically eat the egg raw, but that's not the way we eat eggs. But it has to also be a food item that is oila shulchan shemalachim.
So omelet would be.
Yeah, eggs are considered. Mechaber mentions it. Mechaber mentions it. Yeah, but an egg is important.
When I was in college, some of these
Right,
hotels,
right.
they would see over the Pesach meals, they would back the guests.
Yeah, really. Well, it depends. If you turn on the fire, if a Jew turns on the flame, then it's okay. At least for Ashkenazim. Yeah. But for Sephardim, you have to put the pot on the fire. So the Shach makes this point that even though Bnei Me'ayim are not Dover Royal Iskabet, but Oila Shulchan Shel Melachim they are. So just be careful. Don't have a goy make it for you. That's all.
So Bishul Akum.
Bishul Akum would apply for it. Right. Yeah, even though it's not a main course, it's not something which is Royal Iskabet. That's correct. The Tur talks a thing about it later on too. All right.
There's also the
Why? What will qualify as Shulchan Shel Melachim? Usually.
I mean, that was the issue of jelly beans already.
Jelly beans, no.
No, I think
It could depend, but generally it's not an issue because something that is oila shulchan shel melachim is oila shulchan shel melachim. I'll tell you why.
I'm just thinking
What you're saying applies. There's a question in Mexico about tortillas. Okay, you know what tortillas are?
Sure.
Yeah.
In pita.
Tortillas is something that is eaten by almost every Mexican. Everyone, from the north to the south, from the east, west, everybody eats it. It's a staple food. It's just something that everybody eats. It's cheap, it's tasty, it's good. And it's kosher. As long as it's the corn tortillas that has no lard. But the problem is it's made by a goy. Okay? Made by a goy, but it's something so simple, something so that the amcha, the people eat. It's not really oila shulchan, or is it? Well, if you go to the Mexican president, he'll tell you, of course I eat tortillas. Who doesn't? So that these are the kinds of things that you say, is this oila shulchan shel melachim? It does over there, but not over there. Because this is a food that is only eaten there. So if somebody else were to make it here, here, who eats tortillas here? So no, I'm saying as far as the presidents of the United States, of melachim, right now. Yeah, but we're lenient. We're lenient.
The fact that the president in Mexico eats it asers.
No. So the question wasn't in Mexico.
Mexico.
But we're lenient on. The reason why we're lenient with tortillas is because it's not such a chashuv food. It's a very simple food. It's not cold, even though the king may have it occasionally.
Yeah.
It's not food that you would be serving.
It's
not a formal food. Yeah, that's all. Yeah.
We're talking about serving it like
Yeah,
as
something.
opposed to what he eats on his own.
Exactly. Yeah. Would he serve it to Obama? Is it him? He actually may.
We're serving the Queen of England question.
Yeah, Queen of England is a better example. Anyway, see Vav. Now this is an important halacha because he includes here in one halacha birya and chaticha ruyel iskabed. So this criteria, this condition applies to both of them. When they're not bottled, that it has to be that they're intact. But if they were cut up, or they were crushed, or they lost their form and shape, they're bottled, the sulah chashiv, they're no longer chashim. And what the chiddush here is, even if the risuk, the crushing, the losing its shape and form, happened after they were mixed. And the Ramah adds in parentheses here, does that sound familiar? Noida? Lo noida?
Sure.
Even after the tarovis was noida, because once something is noida, it usually implies, now for sure it's aser. I know about it. It's established. Exactly. So that's why it's inserted here, these words. Even though I know about it. It makes no difference. The Mechaber says, you know why? Because I look at the Issa right now. It's crushed. It's beyond recognition. It's not a birya. It's no longer a Issa. I don't care if it was in the beginning. Right now it's not. But there's one exception to all of this, as long as it was not done intentionally. That, yes. That the Mechaber will agree. That's what he says, if you actually intentionally crushed it, tore it apart, made it un-royal iskabed or un-birya, right? Then asur lamerasik. It's also to the one who did it. Im ushelo, if it's his. V'chen hamish nisrak b'shvila, or for whoever it was intentionally done for, as we've seen before by bittul isur lechatchila. Intentionally, you cannot be mevatel an isur lechatchila. If you do so, it's also for you. It's also for the one you made it for. You did it for.
Why did you have the detail on that? We learned before with Biria in an arm or a leg. No.
Right. Okay. Very good. Very good. Very good question. Because by Biria, we already discussed it. If it's missing a limb, that's where a Biria in some ways is more lenient than chaticha ruya l'skabed. Because a chaticha ruya l'skabed, if you cut off a small piece, it could still remain a chaticha ruya l'skabed. Whereas by Biria, if it's missing a leg, it's completely crushed, it's lost its shape and form.
But since by Beria you know that this is its leg,
Right.
why does he include it if it's mitrasik together with a...
Oh, why doesn't he include it here?
Yeah, we already, even if it loses its leg, it's already din. So why does he include it?
Yeah, that's a good question. Why does he bring it up again? We already discussed it before.
We said this is.
Yeah. So the question is, why does he mention it again? Yeah, I thought about it when I was learning it, but why would he mention it again? He already mentioned
Maybe
it
he
before.
wants to say the bittul, wants to include it in that, so he includes it.
He's more laughing.
No, we know about bittul isur lechatchila before. We also know that.
So the question is, why does he b'chlal mention bittul? Even the chatchila.
Yeah. Let's see here. I think he's comparing the two. See that they have a similar. I mean, that's a simple shot. He is saying that they're both very similar in the din. That if something happens to the shape and form, they lose that cheshivas. Yeah, it's a good.
He says something understanding.
Let's see. Go ahead.
I understand.
Go ahead.
או לעניין בריה, הכי כאילו שאם נתרסק, או שנבדה ונפסרה צורתו, אף על כך שהוא עדיין שלם, אני רוצה לומר שלא נתמסמס עד שאינו עוד אחד.
It's still also.
השבטו כבליה. So he's making a distinction here between...
I'm saying over there by Biria. I'm sorry, by Biria. No, regardless what happens.
Shalem even wasn't nitmasek.
It's what?
He's calling it shalem. It could be shalem even though it wasn't.
Yeah, but it's no longer a Biria. It loses.
It's Hashivas as a birya, even
Right.
though it's still shalem.
Right.
So I'm definitely imagining something that was nitrasek and still.
Yeah,
That's what
it's
he's
crushed. That's what nitrosek means. It got crushed. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what he
Here, there obviously is some additional detail in this halacha, and that is that he goes on to say that afilum nitraskul achar shenisarvu maheter, even after he got mixed in, he is further elaborating on the halacha of that it broke up. In other words, don't think that if it broke up and then fell in, even if it fell in and then it broke up. So it is a little bit. He is qualifying it a little bit more in this halacha, even though he does not say it here, but the Meforshim speak about it, that by Chaticha Ruil Iskabed, there are some differences. As I just pointed out, if you would cut a piece away from it, it still may remain a Ruil Iskabed, whereas a Birya would no longer be a Birya if you took away a leg. Mm-hmm. You see, so Chaticha Ruil Iskabed would be a little bit more stricter. So the Shach speaks about the differences between the two. By Birya, if it's missing a limb, he says, it's still a Botlo Din Birya. Chaticha Ruil Iskabed, if it's missing a small piece, it still may be a Chaticha Ruil Iskabed. Primigodim brings another chiluk that I saw, whether birya shesorcha, and it's still edible, it may still have a din birya on it, but Chaticha Ruil Iskabed shesorcha is no longer Ruil Iskabed. Sorcha means that it's no longer fresh, it became somewhat spoiled. So if it's a birya, it still has a din birya on it, but the chaticha ruil iskabed, can you serve it this way? You can't. So maybe it loses a din of ruil iskabed once it's sorcha. So there you have two chilukim between a birya and chaticha ruil iskabed. One is in the chiluk of cutting away a small piece, it's still a ruil iskabed possibly. The second is sorcha. Primigodim remains with the tzorechiyun. He's not sure, I mean, if it should be matmer or not, if it's sorcha. So it means it's spoiled. It's no longer fresh. It's not as good as it used. Okay. Then the Ramo adds, "Ve'en chiluk ben nisarvu b'minam or shelo b'minam." as we mentioned earlier, it doesn't make a difference if they got mixed up, b'minam shlo b'minam. And here, the poskim talk about what's the hechetimtza. In other words, where do you find, what are we talking about exactly over here? Min b'minam v'minam she'eino minam. So let me see here. Also, there's various ideas over here. Yeah. Prima Godin brings down that there's various possibilities. The example of a min b'mina, for example, Babirya, one possibility could be is a Eva Minachai. Remember, Eva Minachai is a birya? You can't eat it. So if you have an Eva Minachai mixed up with other limbs of animals that were kosher, shechted, right? And the limbs are there, that would be an example of min b'minoi. So, because he says there's no difference between ben isarvu b'minam or shelo b'minam. In other words, how do you have it b'minoi, where one is
an end and
one
the
is
other also ends. Yeah, so
no, by beer, right? By beer, how would you detect? I mean, it's tameh. It's no good.
Right.
One possibility is by every minachai.
Also maybe
There are others.
With other gidim.
Yeah, gidim also. There can be others. But I chose the one that makes the most sense. The most, Then you have a situation. By Chaticha Rulis, Kabbalah the Shach speaks about that. How do you find a situation where you have min be'eno minoi? Chaticha Rulis Kabbalah. If it's a Chaticha Rulis Kabbalah, the min be'eno minoi. I mean, can't you tell? So he gives the example when you have three kinds of animals that were slaughtered, and then you found out later that one of them is not kosher, the pieces. Okay, so that you can have a situation of min be'eno mino. It's a little difficult to figure out what is the situation where actually, one is min be'mino, one is be'eno mino, but you have a few examples either in the Shach or in the Prima Garden. Okay, let's just go on. We're pretty much here done with the Siman Sif Zayin. Real quickly, nechtach o chaticho achas in toilin loima shel isor nechtach umizbatel v'yu kolom mutorois ela oiso shenechtach o belvad muteres mimon efshach. Okay, let's say that you have a whole bunch of pieces and one of them got cut up. Now, what do we say about a piece being cut up? We're talking about the halachos of royal iskabed, that it's no longer royal iskabed. So the Mechaber says, if one piece, listen carefully, one piece got cut up, Ein toili loima shel isur nechta. We don't say the isur is the one that got cut up, and it should be mizbatel. In other words, the yu kulam mitoros. But what's the din? The din is la oiso shenechtecha bilbad. Only that one that got cut up muteres miman nefshach. Only that one which got cut up is okay. Miman nefshach. What's miman nefshach? If it's shel isur af kulam mitoros. If I potentially include this piece as being potentially one of the ones that could have been usher, then all of them are mutter because it's cut up, right? The im eino shel isur. If this piece is not an isur, muteres, then it would be for sure mutter. But filu nechtecho ruban, even though the majority were cut up, ein toilin loymar she'isur mero. We don't depend on saying that the isur probably came from the roiv shenechtecho. All the ones that were cut are mutter, and the ones that are intact are also. Let me explain to you what's going on over here. In order to properly understand this halacha, we really have to go on to another siman. It talks about the halacha of kol de porish miruba porish. What we know so far is something called roiv. And the Mechaber says, even though you may have a situation here where the majority are cut up, right, as he says, afilu nechtechu ruban. And what's going to happen? Something that is cut up is not royal iskabed, right?
Right.
And you're going to say, wait a minute, the majority of the pieces are cut up. Why don't I say, or why don't I assume, we have roiv, that the isur, which is one piece, came from that roiv? Why can't I apply the din of roiv here? Right? Or in the first case, im nechtecha chaticha achas, which is different a little bit. It's a different scenario, right? It's a minority. We don't say ain't toiling. You know what? Let's assume that's the one that was aser. Where do you take that from? No, because there is such a thing. There is a halacha later on that if something fell into the water, a piece fell off and disappeared, was eaten up. We assume that's the one that was the aser one. Great. So Mechaber is anticipating that. We don't know what he's talking about yet. Because why would we think so? What's this toiling?
Right.
Okay, so that's why don't be overly concerned if you don't fully understand this halacha, because you really have to understand later on. But all I'll say to you right now is, just to make it clear, is that there's two halachas in this seif. One says that if it's chaticha, one that got cut up, that chaticha will for sure be mutter.
Why?
Okay, all right.
Let me formulate my way.
All right.
Because if I have a pot of cut up chatas,
Right.
and I have an isser in there.
All of them are full of cut up
All of
pieces?
them are cut up. I have an isser in there that is chaticha that chabed.
Right.
Then all of them that are cut up is as long as I have chaticha or chabed. I can't take out of the pot one of the cut up ones and eat. The uyanit chabed is answering everything else in the pot.
Well, let's take the first scenario. One of them got cut up. Right?
Yeah.
So he says that chaticha will be memanef shach mutter. Because if, as the Taz explains, the Mechaber, because if you read the Mechaber, it doesn't make sense too much. Because Mechaber says, im he shel iser, if this one is from the iser,
If this is the chabed,
that's why it's not exactly so. You have to read the Taz. Without the Taz, it's if this one is the iser, then it's iser.
yeah, it's not answer, even if it's cut.
Exactly.
It doesn't answer the others
Exactly.
anymore, but it itself
So
is
that's
answer.
why you have to read the Taz. Because when you read the Mechaber, he says, what is he talking about? Im he shel iser, av kulan mutaris. Then they're all mutar. Okay, thank you. But this, except, and I'm saying that this one is mutar right now.
Well, exactly. That's the only one that's mutter.
Exactly. So the Taz explains, and the Yisrael explain that what the lashon here really is, im hishel iser. In other words, if I include this piece, the piece of usr, okay, in the mixture. In other words, if I say that the iser is in this mixture, okay, then as a result of one piece of this piece being cut, it's mutter. Okay, I'm not saying that this piece is usr.
This is not the Isser piece.
Right. I'm not saying that this is the Isser piece. I'm saying that I'm including the Isser piece in this mixture.
Well, that's our presumption.
Right.
That's why we
right.
can get into the problem.
Right.
The problem,
What?
probability of the Easter
Right.
is high.
No. So that's what he's saying.
Right.
If this piece is to be, if the piece of the Isser is to be included in the potential of being cut, he's not saying that this is the one. Okay. In the potential of having been cut, then kulan mutaris. Okay, does that make sense? Kulan mutaris, because the Isser was cut up.
The Isser, see?
Right.
With the exception of the Isser itself.
Right, but I don't know which one is the Isser. So it's Batul Beroiv.
But only if it was the Isser that was cut up.
Right.
If any of the other pieces was cut up besides the Isser, then the Isser is still ussering it.
Right.
So what's the money shach?
Right.
The money shach means in both sides, I always get a way that I can eat it.
Right.
But the truth is, if I don't assume that it was the Isser piece that was cut up, then the Isser piece is still shleimus. It's still somewhere in.
But there is the
possibility.
possibility. That's why you have to read the Taz to understand the words of Mechaber. That the Taz explains is that here we're talking about not that this piece is the Isser part, but there's the potential that the Isser has been cut up. In other words, that the cutting up applies to the Isser as much as it applies to the head.
In other words, it's a blemish on the Chabet that it could have been cut up.
It could have been cut up. Exactly. It could have been.
It takes away.
Exactly.
It takes away.
That's the way
because it could have been.
It could have been cut up. If you allow for that, then everything else is mutter.
Then in itself becomes mutter.
And then in itself it becomes mutter. Right. That's right.
With Baroque, so that when you got down.
Same thing. It makes no difference.
It was already eaten.
And if v'mena shel iser then arei muteres. All right. Now the second part was that even if the majority were cut up, we don't say that the iser came from the majority. Briefly, what's going on over here? The Taz says that there's a chiddush over here. It's a chiddush in halacha. Usually we hold called the parish meruba parish. And I would easily want to say that this piece came from the roiv. What I have here, the cut up pieces came from the roiv. I mean, right? I mean, I'm saying in the second case, that the afilu nechte charuban ein tolem isur is from the roiv, and therefore it was also cut up, right? The ones that are cut, I say, are cut, are mutter, and the shleimus are still asur.
But excuse me, now I have a big problem with the Basar on the first part.
Right.
And the problem is, if indeed the possibility that it may have been cut blemishes the hadicha royality chabet such that it can no longer usher anything in the pot, including the one that was just
Right.
then I should be able to eat everything. If the fact that the fact that it may have been cut
Right.
itself is sufficient to remove the yachtzin quality from this piece.
Right.
Because it may have been cut.
Right.
So then each and every piece in this pot is now mutter. Not only the one that was cut,
But that's the chiddush. That's what the mechaber is saying.
but it doesn't. But the Taz explanation of the mechaber doesn't seem to work so well, because according to the Taz, I should be able to say, see, the mechaber is now a chiddush on the Taz, who's coming to explain the mechaber's chiddush. Because according to the Taz, I should be able to eat any piece in the pot.
Yeah.
Because there is no chaticha chabed in the pot there that is answering anything anymore. It's misbatel in 60 in Roy, according to this understanding in the Taz. If this is what the Taz means, I don't understand why anything would be prohibited in the pot.
Yeah. Anyway, here there's a special din. It's a different kind of a din, and it pays to look at the Taz inside. He says that the din here is not like called a porish meruba portion. It was the one that has been separated here, or the one that has been cut here. Let's say the second example. The ones that have been cut, there has been a change done, a change that occurred to them, and we don't say that this change happened to the Isser. Yeah, we don't say necessarily that this change happened to the Isser. First, I should read it from the inside. Everywhere he says, we say, we go after the Roiv. Here, kol shenishtana mikadmusoi min haroiv have. 1 second. I would want to say that everything that got changed came also from the Roiv, and it would be like called the Porish Meruba Kaporish, and the Isser shehu amuat lo nishtana did not change. Vehufrosh mikadmusoi. But Ein Loimar. Okay, no, Ein Loimar is already something else.
And that's a complete steer to the first one.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, but anyway, that's already a separate thing. Yeah, but anyway, I read it wrong. So that is his explanation. That Kol shenishtana mikadmusu min haroiv have. Whatever got changed is most likely from the majority. That which got changed, that which got cut up, most probably came from the heter. Okay, and therefore, what is remaining is possibly still usher. So it's all a suffix. This whole din is a very unique din, because if you look at it, if you learn it, it appears to be like the Taz was saying and everybody's saying that perhaps we should apply the halachas of Roiv, and the halacha is that we don't apply it here, because this is a little bit different. In other words, here we say the other way around. We say that what changed, if anything, is the
whenever I took a piece and cut it, it probably came from the
Roiv.
It's not an Isser.
Exactly. So it's the opposite din of called the Porish Meruba Porish.
So the Isser
In a sense.
escaped being cut.
Yes.
Because it's a minority.
Exactly.
In terms of
Yeah. So which is a very interesting chiddush. By the way, the Aruch HaShulchan has a whole different way of learning this.
Interesting.
Yeah. But we don't have the time to get into that. I just want to bring up one question which I thought was very interesting. I saw a question, somebody brought up a very, very nice question. And that is like this. In this seif, we have a suffix, don't we? Whether it's the first scenario, the second scenario, one was being cut or the majority being cut. Don't we have here a suffix on the piece of also? Isn't that a suffix derabbanan? Isn't that a suffix derabbanan? And what did we say? We already had a question about chaticha rudis kabet. It's a suffix. And what's the din if they have pieces and we don't know if it's the Isser is a chaticha rudis kabet or not? It's a suffix derabbanan lekula. So why aren't we? Huh? Yes. So I thought that was a very good question. Why don't we just say he's suffix derabbanan lekula? So the answer that I saw was that here it's a little bit different, because here it's a din of parish. It's a din that it's a piece that came out. It's not mixed. It's a more chumrah, or it's a bigger chumrah in this halacha than ordinarily. Ordinarily, when you have a taaruvot, when you have a mixture, you have such a suffix. It's a roides kabel, not roides kabel. Here, it's a din. We still have to analyze it. It's still a good. I think it's still a good question. But here, it's a little stricter because of the din of porish. In other words, something came out. Something happened as a result of the cutting, of removing a piece, and because of that, maybe it's a little bit more
We also
chomer.
have this about a suffix shakul, also not.
No, that was only in the suffix feka, but it could be. Yeah, we have to look at it a little bit more. But I thought it was a very interesting question. But it makes sense that this suffix would be a little bit more of a chumrah, only because it has been separated. I think there's another explanation for it. Let me see if I can remember. Okay, I can't recall right now. Maybe by Thursday we'll. The last two halachas are very easy. If you have a gizzard that was found to have a hole and got mixed up with other chickens, you compare the fat of this kurkavan to the fat of the other chicken, where they connect. If they are exactly the same, then we make the other ones kosher. I'm going to explain this in a minute. Rosh keves shenimtza treifa. You found the rosh keves, and you found out that this one is treif. V'lo noida meize keves. We don't know from which sheep it came. V'yikifu rosh letzavoroi, and they took the head, connected it to one of the necks of the animals. V'nimtzu chatichos doimos, and they found, you know what? This is the head of this particular sheep. Yesh lismach al zeh lehatir acheres. You can say the other sheep are okay. Today in schlachthouses, in what do you call it, slaughterhouses, there's a whole system. If there's a good hashgacha of putting marks, numbers. This lung belongs to this animal. This liver belongs here. You have to keep track of everything, because if they find out later on, oh, wait a minute, this is not glatt. Well, this is number 5. They put a big X on it. So it requires tremendous organization. That's what these halachas are talking about. How can you, if you don't have the number system, make everything else kosher when only one of them is treif, because of the kurkavan has a machat or some other treif from the rosh keves? And their answer is like this. The Bach appears to say that he learned that you need 2 things. You need that they look alike and that they fit well. But the maskana is not like the Bach. The maskana is, most poskim hold that it's enough if you can be mechaven, if you can actually fit the 2. They don't have to look alike. Look alike maybe is necessary by shuman, by certain things that they have to look alike. You can, at times, use appearance. For example, let's say there was a machat. You found an actual machat, a needle, in one of the stomachs or whatever, that perforated.
So it makes it...
And the machat is gone. When you went to look for it, somebody threw it away. If you can find a stain in the stomach, and you're a good bucky in that you can tell, you know what, this is where probably the machat was, it would be okay. You would say, you know what, all the other chickens are probably okay. This is where I found it. In other words, you have to be a bucky in these things. Halacha lemaisa, we paskin today that you can't be too creative. In other words, the only time we rely on these 2 halachas is in the case where you can be mechaven. You can fit one with another. You cannot use other criteria. Oh, it looks like it. The appearance are the same. This one is white, and this one is white. That one is darker. You have to be very, very careful with this. We're talking about real tarfus over here. So the only time where we are lenient is with this detail, the detail of being mechaven to things. If we can actually see that the 2 fit together, this is the treif one, and the rest of them are kosher. Okay, we'll review it in Mitzvah Hashem a little bit more on Thursday.